All right, let's see if this thing is working now.
Otis College is
I apologize for that. There was a little bit of an issue with starting the stream. So for those of you guys who are patiently there and listening, thank you so much. So forgive my voice. My voice is really, really bad today. I have a bit of a cold, so it's been kind of this ongoing dilemma that I'm trying to get better, but I'll do the best you can. Tell me if you guys can hear me okay, and if you guys can see me okay, so that we can continue. So let me double check with you guys on the chat. All right, great. Thank you so much for that. So today's topic is one that's really important because when it comes to talking about things like plant-based diets, there's all sorts of buzzwords right now going on, and people get really, really excited and obsessed that I'm going vegan, I'm going plant-based. But there's a difference when we talk about plant-based diets, specifically healthy plant-based and unhealthy plant-based. And so compared to healthy versus unhealthy, we're going to look at this very crucial issue today and talk about what makes something healthy and what makes something unhealthy, and what are those key ingredients in a healthy plant-based diet that can set you up for success. So as always, not my opinion, always present studies. The studies will be referenced for you inside the comments, so just take a look there so you can have them. So the first thing that you want to know over here specifically is the fact that when we start to talk about healthy diets for chronic kidney disease, they all share something in common. So there was a study, it was a prospective analysis done, published in 2021, looked at 2,400 individuals, ages 21 to 74, GFR 20 to 70, and they did a follow-up for about 7 years. And what they found in this study was that when they look at the risk of chronic kidney disease progression, there were 3 diets that lowered the risk of CKD progression. First was DASH, which stands for Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension, and it was linked to a 17% lower risk for chronic kidney disease progression. The second was the Alternative Healthy Eating Index, and that had a 17% lower risk as well. And the third one was the Alternative Mediterranean Diet, and that had a 25% lower risk for chronic kidney disease progression. So if you're wondering, well, what's common in all 3 of these diets? It turns out that basically all of these diets at their core are plant-based diets that then they add stuff to it. So for example, they at their core is lots of vegetables, whole grains, nuts, seeds, legumes. That's the foundation. And in this particular study, what they found was that if you consumed more vegetables, you had a 20% lower risk for chronic kidney disease progression. If you consumed nuts, you had a 25% lower likelihood of having chronic kidney disease progress. So if you're wondering what makes nuts so incredibly healthy, even though you might have heard that a lot of people in the plant-based community say things like, oh, you shouldn't eat nuts or anything that has fat. Well, nuts are really interesting because a few things. First, they are a rich source of magnesium. Why should we care? Because when you eat more plants and you get more magnesium, what you will find is 2 things. First, magnesium will lower the inflammation in your body. That's very helpful. 2, it will prevent the inside of your blood vessels, or what we call the endothelial layer, from having problems. So it keeps your blood vessels healthy. So inflammation in blood vessels. The other thing is nuts are a rich source of plant-based proteins, and they are known to lower FGF23. What the heck is FGF23? That's fibroblast growth factor 23. And the reason that matters is because FGF23 rises as kidneys get worse. Now, one of its jobs is really to get rid of phosphorus, which sounds good, but in advanced kidney disease, higher levels of FGF23 are linked to higher risk of death. So you want that to be lower. Magnesium helps that. The other thing is magnesium has phytates. And why should we care? Because phytates will prevent phosphorus from being absorbed inside our gut. So if you can increase the magnesium in your diet, that's good, but you can do that simply by eating nuts. And the last part is plant-based diets are a rich source of prebiotics. What are prebiotics? Fiber. And what fiber will do is it will feed all the bacteria in your gut and help to have nice, healthy bacteria that's going to be present there. So if you're watching this right now and you're thinking about the foods to eat, the thing with healthy plant-based foods are those are things like fruits, vegetables, whole grains, nuts, legumes, and tea and coffee. Tea and coffee are pretty incredible things because they have such amazing benefits. On the flip side, there's the unhealthy plant-based diets. And the unhealthy plant-based diets are the things that include lots of refined products, whether it's refined grains, whether it's potato chips or French fries, and things like fruit juices. Remember, we always talk about the idea that fruits are excellent, fruit juices not so much. Sugar-sweetened beverages are not the greatest thing. Desserts are not the greatest thing. So all of those things are important to understand because at the end of the day, the more unhealthy plant-based foods you're eating, the less fiber you're getting, the less micronutrients you're getting, the less magnesium, folate, potassium you're getting, and all of those things have been shown to lower the risk of kidney disease. But because you're not getting those, you're not getting the diet part that can help to protect your kidneys. Now, the other side of this equation is what we call the dietary acid load. And dietary acid load, or some people will say PROL or other things, potential renal acid load, the reason those things matter is because what happens with dietary acid load is you're going to increase the ammonium concentration. And what that's going to do is it's going to lead to all sorts of inflammatory pathways to get activated. As the inflammation starts to get activated, other things also get activated. For example, aldosterone. What does aldosterone do? Hold on to salt, get rid of potassium. And we've already said that potassium is actually protective of kidney disease. And the last part is you start to get scarring or fibrosis as you start to increase acid. Now, animal proteins, we've talked about the fact that they're going to end up increasing the amount of acid inside your blood. And the reason they're going to do that is because of the fact that as you eat more and more animal proteins, when they go inside your intestines, they're going to cause the production of more acid type byproducts. They're going to go in the blood. They themselves have acid. But when you switch it over to things like fruits and vegetables, you're actually going to decrease the net amount of acid. So what happens if you lower the acid? You lower the inflammation. You actually lower the damage to the endothelial layer. You lower the production of aldosterone, and you protect the gut bacteria from running into issues. Then the other part of this is as you eat more plants, you're going to find that the bacteria in your gut is able to make more short-chain fatty acids. Short-chain fatty acids are important because what they'll end up doing, so one thing is, the more short-chain fatty acids you have, the healthier the gut you're going to end up forming. But what is so important of these short-chain fatty acids is they're going to help to have healthier bacteria present inside your gut. And that really makes a difference. On the flip side is, as kidney disease gets worse, what happens is you start to form all kinds of toxins and metabolites. And those are things, for example, like uric acid. You increase the amount of uric acid that's forming inside your blood. You start to get issues like bad bacteria that's forming. And then you get different uremic toxins like p-cresyl sulfate, indoxyl sulfate, trimethylamine oxide. All of these things are going to start to be formed because you're adding more animal products and more processed foods into your diet. And as you create more acid, what ends up happening is in order for that acid to get clear, it passes through our kidneys. And as it passes through our kidneys, the challenge that we end up running into is as that acid is going through, it's going to start to break down muscle, it's going to start to cause bone to break down, and that can lead to a host of problems, the least of which is the risk of fractures. And on the flip side, what ends up happening is as you eat more plants, you're introducing alkaline, which will lead to lower levels of acid, higher levels of bicarbonate, and that actually makes a significant and substantial amount of difference as far as the overall health is concerned. So, unhealthy plant-based diets, unfortunately, will make the acid burden worse, and healthy plant-based diets will help to improve the acid burden. All right, let me go ahead and go to the chat, say hi to some people, and I see a whole bunch of you are out there, and Kissy Cat and everybody else, so sorry for the beginning. There wasn't any sound, there wasn't even any picture, so I apologize for that, but I'm glad everything is working now. It's good to see everybody. Hi, Ron. Hi, Donato. Nice to see you. Tyrone, great to see you as well. And Teresa, thank you so much for letting me know you guys can hear me and see me okay. And then let's see if there's any questions or anything like that before we keep going. And Kissy Cat said she's been mixing 2 tablespoons of chia seeds in her oatmeal, and which is actually pretty cool. I actually do flax seeds. Flax seeds are my favorite. I put flax seeds in everything, including oatmeal. So if you're doing chia seeds, the data on chia seeds and flax seeds are the same. So just remember that in terms of overall health benefits. It's not like chia is better than flax or flax is better than chia. Do whichever one pleases you. And Lazy Boy, hi, how are you? Tyler, hello, how are you doing? That's great. Okay, now, in terms of the latest study that we're going to talk about today, this is the CRIC study. It's a multi-center prospective study, ages 21 to 74, GFR 20, which is stage 4, all the way up to 70, which is normal if you don't spill any protein. About 2,500 people, followed them up for about 7 years, and they divided the groups into 3 groups. First, healthy plant-based foods. Second, unhealthy plant-based foods. And third was animal-based foods. So plant-based foods, animal-based foods, and within the plant, it was healthy and unhealthy. And what they were looking for, their primary outcome, was really to see, did the kidneys get worse? And that was defined as kidney function dropping by more than 50%. So some of the things about the groups, because anytime you look at a study, you want to understand what kind of people were in the study and does it apply to you. So in this one, there were the people who were following the overall plant-based diet. They were more likely to be older and to be women. They were already less likely to be obese, and they were less likely to be smokers or drinkers. So in other words, the folks that were following the plant-based diets were already healthier, and they had already lower levels of urine protein. So keep that in mind as we get to the results. In terms of the participants who were in the healthy plant-based diets, they also tended to be older. They tended to have a college degree and higher level of education. And the important part of this were they were less likely to be overweight or obese, and they were less likely to be smokers. And then the people in the unhealthy plant-based diet group, they were likely to be younger men, current smokers, and have lower income and lower education. So that's a huge thing to understand about the study, because that can affect the outcomes of what we're going to talk about. But let's talk about what they found in this data. What they found is consistent with other studies. The first is the risk of CKD progression was lower in anybody who followed a plant-based diet compared to an animal-based diet. So whether it was unhealthy or healthy, it was still better than the animal model. That's number one. Number two is the healthy plant-based diet was great. How great? Well, the more you were able to stick to a healthy plant-based diet, the more likely you are to have lower risk of all-cause mortality. How much? 21%. Excuse me, 21% based on this study. And what was interesting was that they had a point system. So for every 10 points, you had overall higher plant-based diet score, you had a 17% lower risk of all-cause death, and a 12% lower risk of cardiovascular disease. And what was fascinating was that it didn't take much. If you looked at just a per serving, so in other words, every time you ate, you just ate more plants, you had a 2% lower risk of all-cause mortality. So if you're wondering, does every little thing help? The answer is absolutely yes. On the flip side, for every 10-point higher that they did an unhealthy plant-based diet, there was actually a 10% higher risk of going on dialysis. So once again, as they went to an unhealthy plant-based diet, their risk of dialysis got worse. And as they went to healthy plant-based diet, their risk of dialysis got better. And what was fascinating in the study was when they just took out the fiber content in people's diet, higher fiber intake had a 20% lower risk of having your chronic kidney disease progress and a 27% lower risk of all-cause mortality. So this is where it starts to become really interesting, is that as you're thinking about these things, how little tiny changes that you can make such a difference. And specifically, if you're wondering, so I've heard everything on magnesium, I've heard everything on potassium, I've heard everything on phytates. All of these things are going to be higher in a plant-based diet. All of these things are going to lower the risk of your kidneys getting worse. So, take-home message. Based on this stuff, the take-home message really is what you want to think about is the more vegetables, fruits, legumes, whole grains, and anytime you do all of this, you're going to get a rich amount of fiber, a rich amount of magnesium, a rich amount of potassium, and of course, it will be lower in sodium. And if you can lower how much meat, salt, refined products you're eating, you're going to lower the risk of chronic kidney disease progression. Just keep in mind that this is about progress, not perfection. So in other words, if you're in a place where you say, I can't give up meat completely, that's okay. That's okay. If you can cut back on it, and what the data shows is if you can cut back to once or twice a week, that brings your risk down dramatically, and it's a huge deal. So if you can even do that, it's amazing. Don't forget that things like tea and coffee are awesome. Of course, water is awesome, but a lot of people have questions about tea and coffee. The data shows they're both protective when it comes to chronic kidney disease, so you can definitely do that. Even when it comes to people who have stones, coffee can actually prevent kidney stone. So it's very fascinating to hear that. So with that, let's go into the chat and see what questions you guys have. So let me scroll up here because I think I messed up a little bit in the beginning. D. Dutton asked the question, renal capillaries receive blood flow primarily during diastole when the heart is relaxed. So remember, when it comes to the blood flow that's going to inside your kidneys, the blood flow inside your kidneys is a very, very complex equation. It has to do with the difference that you're going to see between hydrostatic pressure and what we call oncotic pressure. And I'll put a little link for you guys inside the chat so you guys can go check out this whole complicated explanation that I would have to do an entire session to try to explain it to you guys. But if you look in the chat, I have put the link for a great study that goes through all of the physiology on how blood flow into the kidney works. So if you're bored, it's Friday night and you're having whatever you're having, right? You want to sit there and read something that's really dry and complicated, but at the same time explains that, you'll see that it goes through that concept so you can understand. Let's go to the rest of the questions. Somebody asked, is it normal for your body to rid itself of refined sugars once you stop eating it? So the interesting part about that is, your body is such an incredible thing that it's constantly regulating. In fact, the reason people have such a hard time losing weight is, what does the body do? When you try to lose weight, it tries to pull you back to where you used to be. That's why diets start off great, but they slow down because the brain is fighting you. But your body has this remarkable ability to regulate itself. Too much water, you start to pee more. too much salt in your body, your kidneys will work harder to get rid of it. So in terms of all of that, yes, one of the most effective ways to make sure that you're getting rid of sugar is not just put less in, but also move more. Put less in and start to do any kind of cardiovascular exercise, walking, jogging, running, biking. And the one thing that most of our patients with kidney disease never do is they don't do resistance training. As you know, I tell all my patients that if you're going to exercise, well, not if you're going to, you must exercise. Very few things in life are a must, but you must exercise. And when you exercise, you got to combine exercise with resistance training. That really makes a difference. And that is going to also help to balance out your sugars. So it makes all sorts of sense as far as that goes. All right, scrolling down to some of the other questions. I was diagnosed with latent TB. Should I get treated? This is a question that's going to be a little bit out of the scope for this talk, only because we're focused more on kidney and nutrition and longevity. But you definitely want to talk to your doctor and see what the pros and cons are of getting the treatment and not, and make that informed decision, because the answer is not as simple as that. Is fish good for IgA? Well, so the data on, fish oil, for example, taking it for IgA is not as great as people hope. And the amount of fish oil, or omega-3 specifically, you would have to take, because you can get omega-3s from algae, is a lot. So you need the prescription version of omega-3s to be able to make sure it's clean, it's pure, doesn't have mercury and all that stuff. All of those impurities are gone. So that's why it's better to get the prescription source. But the data on omega-3s for IgA is not that great. We covered IgA before, and we said that wasn't really one of those things that we would be recommending overall. Now, it's not going to harm you to do it, but not that much. Din asks, would you do an episode on fasting? Absolutely. We can do a whole episode on intermittent fasting and talk about all the different forms, because there's every other day fasting, there's the 5 and 2 method, there's alternate day, there's time restricted eating, there's the Walter Longo's method, which is every few months. You'll do like 4 or 5 days of fasting. So there's so many different ways, and it's important to understand what the data shows that works well or not. Catherine asked the question, if you eat meat once a month, I do eat plant-based meals and eat fruit for dessert, that's excellent. But if you eat meat once a month, that's fine. If you're able to go vegan, good for you. If you can't, that's fine. Remember, the job here is to have a judgment-free zone. I think it's very important to protect the environment. That's my personal beliefs. All of those other things matter. Am I perfect? Absolutely not. I make more mistakes than most of you guys probably do. And that's why it's important to understand that progress over perfection. A lot of people are very quick to judge and say, why aren't you doing 100% of this? And my philosophy is 100% should never be the thing that stops you from being good. Good can beat great almost every time if good is consistent and great is sporadic. Let's see. Ron asked, I'm stage 4, ANCA GPA, just past induction phase, loving your evidence experience-based advice. Thank you. Oh, that's very, very kind. And driving my new low protein, low salt, low plant-based diet. So you're doing awesome because you're doing the key things. Remember, it's more plants, which leads to low protein, low salt anyways, and gives you all the nutrients, including fiber. So everything that you're doing is amazing, and that will definitely lower it. And don't forget, in terms of the medications, we have lots of options to be able to lower protein way more than just 5 years ago that we did. So it's awesome that you can have so many different things to try out. Is steel cut oats better than packaged oats? So I don't know, Din, what you mean by packaged oats, but I will tell you that when it comes to oatmeal, the only difference you end up having is with steel cut versus rolled oats is the level of breakdown that they do for oatmeal. So the one that you don't want to do for oatmeal is instant. Don't get instant oatmeal. That's the one you don't want to get. So whether you get rolled oats or you get steel cut oats, obviously steel cut oats, they will be much slower to digest, and therefore you have a much lower glycemic index as far as that goes. So overall, that's great if you can do it. They take longer to cook because of that specific fact, but you can do rolled or you can do steel cut, and that part is fine. Tyler asked, I had my very first nephro visit 2 months ago, had 386 urine albumin creatinine ratio, was put on 50 milligrams of losartan. Remember, that's ARB, and it's designed to lower protein in the urine. And 30 days later, the urine albumin creatinine ratio fell to 92. That's awesome. And so my nephro says I don't have CKD because labs and eGFR are good. Well, that's, Tyler, that's more semantics than anything else. I wouldn't get caught up in semantics. What I would say is when you're just talking about having protein in the urine, if you have it, that's a sign of kidney disease. And you have lowered it very nicely. That's great. And you know, for my patients, I don't tell them you don't have kidney disease. What I tell them is we are controlling the damage that's there, and we want to continue this progress, because otherwise, if you take your eyes off the prize, it can come back, and that can become an issue. So congratulations for taking charge of your health, for doing the right stuff. That's awesome. Let's see. MPM said organic coffee plus red bush tea is naturally caffeine free. Yeah, so whether it's caffeinated or decaffeinated, it's the same in terms of helping overall chronic kidney disease, stones, etc. It's not the caffeine that makes a difference. Catherine said my eGFR went down from 86 to 48 during March and April, and it went up from 48 to 60s. I'm on stage 3. What is normal count of eGFR? Well, eGFR, Catherine, the E stands for estimated. And the reason we say it's estimated because it can change based on so many things. If you have more muscle, it will look like your eGFR is lower. On the other hand, if you're older and you have less muscle, it will look like your eGFR is better than it actually is. So eGFR will fluctuate. If you're just a little dehydrated today, it will look like your kidneys are worse, even though it's because you're dehydrated. Some nephrologists will say things like, drink a bunch of water and then do the blood test. Well, if you drink a bunch of water, you just diluted your creatinine, and it makes it seem like your eGFR is better, but that's just because you have extra water in you. So we try not to play those tricks to make the number look better or worse. We want you at your steady state, do the blood test in the morning. That's the best way to do it. Let's see. Let me take a couple more questions. And what's an unhealthy plant-based diet? So remember, the unhealthy plant-based diets, once again, are going to be things that are what? They're going to be things that are higher in fruit juices, in refined grains, in sugar-sweetened beverages. Basically, when you see the stuff, the more processed it is, the more sugar it contains, the worse off you're going to be. So it makes it very easy to understand which ones are worse. But the healthier options were fruits, vegetables, whole grains, nuts, legumes, tea, and coffee. All right, what's a good bread? Stacy, I have no idea what a good bread is. Great question. I think folks on the chat might actually know, and I'll let them chime in and see what they end up having to say. But in terms of overall, let's see, 88, I think it's Letty. I might be saying that incorrectly, but fermented vegetables are amazing for your overall gut bacteria. So if you're including fermented vegetables, that's awesome as far as that goes. All right. So with that, guys, I'm going to stop right there because I know we are a little bit over, but I also started late because of some technical issues. So I wanted to make sure you get your full 30 minutes. As always, we're here every Friday night, 5 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. Pacific Central Time. The greatest gift you could ever give me is just let your friends and colleagues know about this live webinar. So hopefully we can make sure that we're trying to answer your questions. You know, I just try to do this little bit of good for you guys. Hopefully that helps you guys. And if it does, that's awesome. With that, I want to thank you guys so much for your support. We continue to get better. We continue to grow. And remember, at the end of your life, nobody will ever care about all the material possession and everything else they did. They will care if you were kind. This is my attempt to just be kind. With that, have a wonderful night. Stay